Okay, I think we can start and welcome everybody who has joined us so far. I think there are still some people joining us, but you're very, very welcome. We have great pleasure in launching our released report, the GEM 2022-23 European Regional Report. My name is Aileen Ionescu-Summers. I'll be moderating this webinar. I am the Executive Director of GEM. And let me just say that this report has been written by a plethora of GEM people, the main authors being Niels Bosma, who is with us today. We'll introduce him in a moment, Stephen Hill, and also Rolf Sternberg. But we have had contributions to this report from many of our teams, as you probably may know if you're familiar with GEM. GEM is driven by national teams, and we have 60 national teams right now that are signed up to GEM. And here in front of you, you see the contributors. They come from many of the different teams. Their universities are listed here, but they all represent a country. And many of them are the leaders of our national teams, but not only, there are the very excellent researchers that we have, and they have also heavily contributed to this report. Because to put together a European regional report is a group effort. There are many countries involved. We are lucky enough to have a large contingency of European countries that participate in GEM. And we are taking advantage of that with this report because Europe, of course, is a very important driver of entrepreneurship. So to produce something that is called Research Insights for Policymakers is quite important, as we really want the landscape to become conducive to promoting entrepreneurship. We have to mention and thank, if we could just change the slide, please, our report sponsor, and that is Shopify. You will be familiar with Shopify, that actually supports many of the entrepreneurs that are out there across the globe. And Shopify very generously supported us to actually produce this report, and has been very enthusiastic in commenting on some of the contents. So thank you, Shopify, for enabling this great initiative to happen. If we could just move to the speakers. Today, we have Niels Bosma, whom I said was one of the main authors of this report. He represents Utrecht University and GEM UK. But Niels is also our senior research advisor at GEM, has a long record in participation in GEM. Equally, Rolf Sternberg, who is a main author of the report, and he represents GEM Germany, the Institute of Economic and Cultural Geography at Leibniz University. And Rolf is also a long-standing participant in GEM research. And thirdly, Ana Fernandez-Laviada, who equally has been with us for a very long time. In fact, many of the European participants in GEM have been with GEM for close on 2 decades. And in fact, we are celebrating our 25th anniversary, our silver anniversary next year. So Ana Fernandez-Laviada, she represents GEM Spain and Universidad de Cantabria. So welcome to our panel, and thank you very much for joining us. And Niels is actually going to make an introductory presentation on the main takeaways from the European Regional Report. So over to you, Niels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aileen. And yeah, welcome. It's a pleasure indeed to present some of the findings of this GEM European Regional Report. Maybe I should start with why we actually started with this endeavor, with this report. As you probably know, Global Entrepreneurship Monitor is based on individual level data in terms of adult population survey and national expert survey. And then we publish the results at the national level. So, for instance, in the global reports that we put out, but also in the national reports. At the same time, we also know that entrepreneurship is very much seen as a regional event. We do see various differences in entrepreneurship. People observe that themselves, but also there's quite a big amount of academic support for this idea that entrepreneurship differs quite substantially across countries, as well as the entrepreneurial perceptions, for instance. Yeah, we actually also would like to acknowledge that, and at the same time, we also see that in terms of policy making, there's a lot of attention these days on local and regional entrepreneurial ecosystems, and policy is being made on this. So interventions are being made, analysis are being done to see to what extent we policymakers, but also other stakeholders, can develop and facilitate the fertile ground for productive entrepreneurship. So that is something that is happening, and we want to also provide additional knowledge from GEM to be able to cater to that. As Eileen already mentioned, we have the situation that many of the European economies are regular participants in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor research. We also have something which is called the NUTS regional classification. So we can actually, based on our individual data, we can trace that back to the region these participants come from in the adult population survey. So we can actually make regional classification of the GEM data. Bear in mind that this is quite an endeavor to take on, because we need to really go back to the individual data, see what classification is there, and harmonize everything. But this is what we did. So we merged the data across years. So that is needed to be able to have an adequate sample size per region. Ideally, we would have done this per year, but that is what we cannot do. So that is also a disclaimer to this report. But in the end, we were able to actually include as much as 227 regions across 28 of the European countries, based on a total amount of more than 500,000 individuals. So a lot of data went into this, and it will bring additional insights. At the same time, as always, we would very much recommend to also use other sources to be able to draw the complete picture of entrepreneurship in your region. But obviously also a secondary consequence is that with this data set, it also brings new research opportunities, which in the end can also help policy making. So we hope that that we can bring this as a new incentive also for research. So just a quick snapshot before moving into the regions. What do we see if we look at Europe in terms of GEM results? So also here we've created averages of 2015 until 2021. So this is the time frame we use in this report. And in some cases, for instance, the familiar index of early stage entrepreneurial activity that we use a lot in GEM looks like this. If we have these country averages across 2015, 2021, bear in mind there might be some developments over time within countries. So this is something that, I would also invite you to have a look at the national reports, because they typically produce also the developments over time within the country. But then you see a picture like this in terms of early stage entrepreneurial activity. So we do see differences across European countries. We also have a measure on intrapreneurship, so entrepreneurial employees by entrepreneurial activity by employees. And you can see that these two different measures that both say something about entrepreneurship in the country, you see already quite a different pattern across Europe for this. So for instance, you see entrepreneurial employee activity to be higher, mainly in the Northern Scandinavia and Central European countries. While as, for instance, in Portugal, you see quite a high number of early stage entrepreneurial activity. So you see some differences there already. And now we're obviously interested for this particular report, how that plays out at the regional level. So I will now introduce quite a few maps. I will not be very detailed about it, but I still want to show it because it actually exemplifies the relevance of regional differences in entrepreneurship, but also how the patterns differ across different indicators. So if we start again with the early stage entrepreneurial activity rates, you can see this picture emerging. So you see, in many cases, quite a few differences within the country. For instance, in France, you see where we have the NUTS 1 classification, you see differences there. Southern part, Mediterranean, high. Also, the Paris area is a bit higher compared to other regions. Well, you can see similar patterns in other countries. And in some countries, you actually see also regions that are close to each other that show similar TEA rates. If we contrast that with the other measure that we have on established business ownership, so individuals involved in a business that is older than 36 months, 42 months, I should say, we actually see a very different pattern again. So, for instance, many people involved in established business ownership in regions in Poland and Greece, whereas there are actually there's a low number of these in France, for example. So this is already showing a very distinct pattern. And if we go back to also the entrepreneurial employee activity, we see again a different pattern. So basically, what the interesting thing that we observe is that almost every region shows certain degree of entrepreneurship. So there's hardly any region which scores low on all of these three indicators. So entrepreneurship is everywhere, but it manifests itself in different ways in different regions across Europe. So that is one of the main outcomes we really observe in this analysis. Now, the second thing we do is also look at entrepreneurial perceptions in Europe. This is something also very unique to the GEM project because we survey individuals. We also ask about their self-perceptions towards entrepreneurship. So that is usually not captured in other data like firm registration data. And this is what we get when we look at, for instance, the indicator on perceived opportunities to start a business in the area where the respondents live. So they really look at their own area. And you see very different patterns here as well. For instance, in Scandinavia, they see a lot of opportunities. Yet at the same time, in the previous pictures, we saw that the actual uptake of entrepreneurial activity is not very high over there, which probably has to do with good employment alternatives in these areas. So high opportunity costs for that matter. We also have an indicator on perceived knowledge, skills, and experience to start a business. So how do these individuals judge themselves in that aspect? So also here you see a very distinct, but also a very regional flavored profile there. So that is very interesting, I think, also to really do analysis on. And we also have an indicator which has to do with the fear of failure when it comes to starting a business. And there we, for instance, see that economies, regional economies in Southern Europe, like in Spain and in Greece, they score very high on this indicator, while it is lower in countries like Germany, Netherlands, and Norway. So also here you see different profiles when it comes to entrepreneurial perceptions. Well, to show some of the things you can do in terms of analysis, this is very basic in the report, but obviously it can be more fine-grained and more in-depth in follow-up research, is to see how this actually matches with different indicators. For instance, main demographic indicators like gender and age. Well, this is what you get. We also identified whether a respondent lives in an urban area, a rural area, or an intermediate type of area. And then you can see, for instance, how that plays out across gender. So we see, for instance, the gender gap that we know of in entrepreneurship. We see that happening also here in these different types of regions, but we also see some interesting differences. For instance, when you look at entrepreneurial employee activity, which we see predominantly takes place more than other types of entrepreneurship in urban areas. So this is an interesting finding that we, for instance, see just by looking at the cross relations between our indicators, the regions, and gender. Something similar happens when you look at age. So we made a very basic distinction between age under 35 and 35 and beyond. What we obviously expect is that early stage entrepreneurial activity is associated more with younger age, and established business ownership is associated more with higher ages. This is what we see back in the results as well, but also look again here at the entrepreneurial employee activity, for instance, which is slightly higher in the age beyond 35, but still also relevant at younger ages. So these kind of analysis already give a kind of a hint of what you can do with this data. What we also show in the reports is country cases. So for some of the larger European economies like Germany, France, Spain, Italy, we have a country profile. So this is also where the particular contributions come in. I will show just some of the highlights of one country. So the example here is from Germany, and Rolf, who is in this panel, may add some details on this later. What we see overall in the results, and that is what I basically also showed in the slides before, is that overall in Germany, German regions, there are quite high self-perceptions related to entrepreneurship. Also, preferences for available opportunities for employment are there, and they have a moderate early stage entrepreneurial activity and quite high entrepreneurship rate, so entrepreneurial employee activity. That is what we saw also in the slides. We also saw some main differences already popping up, regional differences that relates to the difference between West and East. Also after reunification, we still observe different patterns in these regions, in these different regions in Germany. But we also see some differences between the North and South, maybe related to cultural differences and other explanatory variables there. And we also saw some differences between urban and rural regions in Germany. So this is the pattern that you see if we look at the differences in early stage entrepreneurial activity rates for German larger regions. So this is also the NUTS 1 classification. Maybe not the best classification for Germany itself to compare regions to, because they also have urban labor market related classifications. But for instance, you see that cities, regions that in which the cities play a main role that we have in the NUTS 1 classification, such as Berlin and also Bremen and Hamburg, they actually show the highest early stage entrepreneurial activity rates compared to other regions. So this is already saying something about the differences between urban and rural, but more patterns can be seen there. So this is just an example of the analysis we did in the chapters. Also, we show a bit more on the indicators over time in these chapters, as well as the policy links there. Then we have also that is the final section, because I mentioned already the relevance of entrepreneurial ecosystems and how policymakers are already looking at that. So there's also a lot of research coming up in terms of entrepreneurial ecosystems. So if we define an entrepreneurial ecosystem as a set of interdependent actors and factors coordinated in such a way that they enable productive entrepreneurship, this is the one of the definitions that goes around, and it links to Eric Stam's framework on entrepreneurial ecosystems, which has been used a lot in practice, and also indicators are more and more collected and designed in order to be able to capture this ecosystem and to identify what are the bottlenecks and what are the opportunities for interventions, for example. So also here, the GEM project actually has an initiative that combines the unique methodologies of the adult population survey and the expert survey, and to also be able to specifically for a local region to assess these indicators. So this is also a possibility that we explored. And we have an index also related to that, so that it gives a very good overview, but also in the end an index, a value that presents the strength of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, looking at these different elements. So in the report, we showed this for 2 regions that actually participated in this very distinct GEM project, so that you can see how this actually plays out. So we looked at this, so we really adopted this framework by Eric Stam, and there were 2 regions that executed this particular research for their local area. So that's Cadiz in Spain and Terras de Trás-os-Montes in Portugal, the northern part of Portugal. And through this research, we were able to assess all these elements of the entrepreneurial ecosystem and how that actually leads to an overall index of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So this is the work we are doing right now. In case you're interested also to do that for your region, then obviously you can find us and contact us through the GEM website. We would be more than happy to give you information on this initiative. All right, so this is also, I think, a snapshot of what we offer in this special report. Some of the key messages, like I said, I think one of the key messages, entrepreneurship is everywhere, but we also see important regional differences in entrepreneurship and perceptions. So we do see very much a confirmation of the notion of entrepreneurship as a regional event. Yet at the same time, we would very much encourage to also use other sources, and that includes the expert insights from stakeholders to be able to assess entrepreneurship in your local area. But since policy is often needs to be based, and implementation and new programs need to be based on actual data, we think that this new collection of data will actually enable the discussion and also the possibility to implement new policy initiatives. So it should really be seen as one useful source that you can adopt, but add this to other sources. Different causes for regional differences. We already see some factors. More research can delve deeper into this, but we already see, for instance, the effect of the degree of urbanity, some cultural aspects, but also the effect of some national level institutions that are probably at play. For instance, when it comes to the difference between perceived opportunities for entrepreneurship and the actual uptake of entrepreneurial activity. So labor market regulations, for instance, probably have some influence on this. We have the data, we made some initial analysis, but there is definitely a need for more in-depth regional analysis. And there will be plenty of opportunities for the research community to do that. So this data will also be shared first among the GEM national teams in Europe, and later on, I guess, also in the public sphere, in the public domain. So there will be a lot of new opportunities to use these data. So that is also, I think, a nice consequence. And finally, like I mentioned at the very end, the ESI as an additional diagnostic tool that we offer within GEM to be able to assess entrepreneurial ecosystems in your area.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Niels, for that introduction. I'm just going to invite people who are listening to us out there to put their question on the Q&A. I should say in advance that as we were actually putting together the slides, we came across, these are very complex slides, so we came across a few minor details that we need to change where the maps are concerned. Generally speaking, they're absolutely sound, but there's just 1 or 2 details. So in case any of you were going to comment on that, we are aware, and we will correct that in the next couple of days. But as I said, please do put your questions on the Q&A. It's always great to hear from the people who are listening to us. Let me just kick off with Rolf and ask whether you would like to just make a few observations based on what you've heard from Niels, and in particular, perhaps bringing in the GEM Germany experience over the years. Very consistent player in GEM. Only missed 1 year during the entire 25 years of our existence. So plenty to say there. So maybe you want to draw on the history of GEM's involvement, of GEM Germany's involvement in GEM, the evolution of your findings over the years, and then anything else you would like to add.
Yes, sure, Eileen, thanks a lot. As an economic geographer, it probably sounds logical to you that I'm interested in the spatial aspects of entrepreneurial activities and its determinants in particular. Yes, and indeed, both are not evenly distributed across space, neither at the global level, nor at the national one, nor at the subnational one. Saying this means geography matters in entrepreneurship as well. But as a team leader of GEM Germany for the last 2.5 decades, I can also tell you that the regional, that is the subnational aspects, play an important role for GEM funding and media attention as well. Regional entrepreneurship sells, as there are several thousands of majors, for example, in German cities, small ones, large ones, and the majority of which likes to have new small firms in their territory, and they would like to know how to help them emerge and grow. So although GEM is primarily a national project, it has to say a lot about entrepreneurship in subnational territories as well, in particular when a tool like ESI, as mentioned by Niels, is used.
Oh, yes. So, I mean, building on what you've just said, though, I think I can safely ask Anna the question about, these sub-regional zones, because Anna has actually been leading GEM Spain on an absolutely exceptional journey, where there are many different universities involved in regional studies. So Anna, maybe you could, bring in some of your experience and comment on that, building on what Rolf has just been saying. Yes, you need to unmute.
Yeah. Thank you, Eileen. Yes, the case of Spain is quite clear that almost since the beginning, we have very clear that the regional aspects and the idea that the entrepreneurship is a regional event, it was important. We are in GEM since 2000, and only 2-3 years later, we began to have regional teams. At the moment, we are, Spain is organized in 17 comunidades autónomas, 50 provinces, and 2 ciudades autónomas. And at the moment, there are 66 regional teams. That means that we have the information to the subnational level and even for the subnational level, because in the case of Andalusia, we have a province team. And I think this report is like put white on black. No, it's something that we knew that the regional that regions have differences, and they have different contexts, different cultural aspects. They have even linguistic differences or the climate. So, and all these things influence in entrepreneurship. So I think this report it was needed. It was something that we all were waiting for a long time, because even if we have the information, it's important to see, in particular in that maps that we have seen today, how there are many differences in regional levels.
Yes, and I mean, I had the pleasure of being in Spain recently, and meeting a lot of the regional researchers, and it is an absolute family of researchers that are, if you like, linking to each other across Spain. And I think, as from that point of view, I almost think it's an exceptional example of academic collaboration across the country. Yeah, and amazing. So Niels, I'm just going to pick up on some of the questions that are already coming in, quite plentiful, from the audience. Florian, who is on the German team, says Poland is interesting. Don't they have a low TA, despite high perceptions of opportunities and competences? I mean, he puts it as a question, but it is rather a statement. Do you have some qualifier there, Niels, to make?
Yeah, well, I can maybe hint, but this is where I think I would be sitting on the chair of the experts of the GEM team in Poland, who
Yes.
are much better to appreciate the differences and how they interpret this. So I actually would be cautious, but in general, we see quite a few instances of where the perceptions, there is a big gap between perceptions and entrepreneurial activity, and in most cases that means that there are other alternatives for these individuals, for instance in employment, but yeah, in the Polish case there may be particular opportunities there which yeah, I think the Polish team would be best in answering these.
Okay, I mean, there are a number of possible answers to that question. And so to go in depth in it, you really have to explore the context very deeply, I think.
Yeah, I see Rolf is responding, so I think you might say something about this.
Yeah, I would like simply to add the following comment. All these perceptual variables are perhaps necessary conditions for starting a firm, but definitely not sufficient conditions. Not in each country, not in each individual case, not in each region, but in general, they have a certain kind of statistical impact on the dependent variable, for example, entrepreneurial activity. But this is not true for each single country, each single region, each single individual.
Yeah, and another comment I would like to make as well is especially if you maybe in Europe this is less of a matter, but the perception on, for instance, do you see opportunities to start a business? The general perception of what a business entails may be different across different countries, and you see had differences. The average business in Denmark is probably different than the average business in Cyprus, and then if you look across the globe, you will actually find even higher gaps there. So this is also one of the disclaimers we need to make. It's still we like Rolf said, we see a big correlation, but I think it's also important to note that we basically leave it to the respondent to assess how they perceive what a business is.
Okay, I have another. Sorry, Anna, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that the case of Spain is also peculiar. If you have a look the opportunity perception in Spain for the last 2 decades is very low. In fact, we are at the last position. So in Spain, there are very low, or Spanish people do not perceive that we have opportunities, and it's something that we have to solve, because I think even it's true that for sure there are more reasons, not only opportunity perceptions or fear to failure or to perceive that you are or you have the capacity to entrepreneur, but if you do not find opportunities in your environment and if you don't perceive that as opportunities, it's difficult to have a high TA. Plus, if you have a fear to failure high, as is our case, it was funny when I saw the maps that when you see the map for perceptive opportunities, Spain is only one color, and is the lighter one. So that means that we are at the bottom of that ranking. And if you compare with the fear to failure, you will see that Spain has only 2 colors and are the darkest ones. So even if they are not the unique conditions, they are two of the most important. And in our case, for sure there are more reasons, but it's one of the most important reasons why in Spain we have not a high TA compared to United Kingdom or France or Germany.
Right. Actually, while I'm talking to you or listening to you, and I'm actually wondering whether you have a view on why it is that Spain managed to have this kind of model example with a strong conceptual and operating framework for Spanish universities to conduct local and regional ecosystem research. Why do you think that this has been such a successful effort nationwide?
Mainly because, as we are saying now, each region is different. And once you are working with the local universities, with the local policymakers, with the local ecosystem, it's easier to find solutions. When I was a child, there was a famous slogan in Spain that said, Spain is different. And it's true, Spain is different, but each region is different. And we need to work from the lowest level. And also, once you participate or collaborate with universities and the academic is also working on this, I think is the best combination, the academic, policymakers, and the rest of the stakeholders, which is in the ecosystem.
Well, are you finding that at that local regional level there is impact on the policymakers? Are you finding that?
We are doing. You have a best example in the Basque Country or Andalusia or Canary Islands, where they are also organizing a regional observatory. Not only I'm the president of the observatory in Spain, but in Spain we have at the moment 3 regional observatories, and they are working hand to hand with policymakers, with the government, and we are helping them to define different programs or policies at the regional level. So little by little, it's true that it took us almost 20 years, but I think the government at local level are beginning to find that we are useful for them and that we have the data that they need to develop new rules or new policies.
Okay, I'm wondering, Rolf, if I could ask you, why do you think this regional report is necessary in terms of policymakers? Can you frame that?
Yeah. I think there are plenty of reasons for the importance of such a report, also for policymakers. It is widely acknowledged that there is a positive impact of entrepreneurial activities on regional economic development worldwide, not just in Europe, although this relationship is a complex one and not a linear one. Having said this, it is obvious that government policy intends to support entrepreneurship in particular regions, for example, economically weak ones and/or those with a low level of entrepreneurial activities. However, someone has to tell them how frequent entrepreneurial activities are in specific areas using internationally comparable methods and data also for the subnational level. Yes, and there is no other data source worldwide that is able to offer this kind of data than GEM and its daughter, the project ESI. So therefore, the report should be very helpful for various regional policymakers making regional policies and policymakers towards entrepreneurial activities.
Thank you. I just wondered, Niels, do you want to build on that? Or Anna, either one of you, do you want to make any comment on why this European regional report is important?
Yeah, I can add to that, I think. Yeah, so like Rolf said, that there is definitely interest for having these regional comparisons. But I think it also helps to bring, I mentioned this also, to bring stakeholders to the table. It is a way for stakeholders in the ecosystem to discuss the state of affairs in their region, to link the results to their observations, and to design policy from there, because you need to do that in collaboration. So I think that is how these data can be used, and why they can actually help bringing people together as well in the region. So this is, I think, also one of the things. So I hope the data will be used for that reason as well, and that can also allow further collaborations, but also further research, and indeed maybe also more GEM regional teams like we have in Spain.
And also, thanks to have such an amount of data in Spain, we do every year more than 35,000 interviews. We have some stakeholders interested in our data. One case is the case of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola in Spain, they have a program for fostering and promote rural entrepreneurship, in particular for women. They asked us 2 years ago to prepare a special report on female entrepreneurship and also female rural entrepreneurship. And thanks to these reports, they are promoting the program that they have, but in particular in these regions where they see that the rural areas are more or is more needed, or they need to be more in that particular areas. So thanks to this data and at a regional level, they are promoting the program. It's called Gira Mujeres in those regions which are more important for them. So sometimes it's for stakeholders, sometimes also for the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs needs they cannot be alone. They need to have a network, and the network is bigger and stronger in the local area more than global or national level. So I think policymakers, stakeholders, entrepreneurs, all of them take the advance to have data at regional level.
So, I mean, in fact, you're making the point that this regional report is valuable to more stakeholders than just policymakers alone, that there are more stakeholders that would benefit from this report. So I'm just wondering, in the writing process of this report, Niels and Rolf, what did you find most challenging in putting the European data together and analysing it? Were there areas that were particularly sticky to kind of muddle through? Maybe Niels, you want to make a comment there?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a challenge because basically this entails going back to all individual data. So for every country, every year, we need to actually check what is the regional classification. You would hope that this is stable over the years. In many cases, this is the case, but then sometimes the order of the regions actually change. So we need to really go into the data to make sure that we have consistency. So that was a lot of work actually. So I also would like to thank those who have joined in to make this happen. So then you have the overall data sets, and then obviously you do the analysis and try to see, okay, what are the important takeaways here. Yeah, that also reminded me, because I did a similar exercise during my PhD, and it actually takes a lot of time. But it's also very rewarding because indeed you see patterns, and overall I think these patterns make a lot of sense, and then you can tie back to indeed also the academic literature. At the same time, we should always be careful, and this is also one of the reasons why I showed this graph also for the German regions, because it remains a statistical exercise, and we have to do with confidence intervals, with upper and lower bounds. So we should not be very quick in jumping to conclusions if one region scores higher than the other, because of these statistical nature of the data. So we can certainly make interpretations broadly about these patterns, but probably not one-on-one to compare regions. So I will also give this as a caution to those who will use it. So really look for the overall patterns rather than jumping into conclusions on one particular region, for example.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if there was anything that actually, during the course of writing, and anyone can answer this question, Rolf, Niels, or Anna, is there anything that kind of just jumped out as being actually quite surprising and unexpected?
Yeah, I could start, Aline.
Rolf?
There are several unexpected results, at least from my perspective. For example, the spatiality, the geography of entrepreneurship, indeed, obviously differs a lot across different countries within Europe. And in a federally organized country like Germany, with 16 federal states that have a lot of autonomy, and the cities therein as well, the inter-regional inequalities in terms of entrepreneurial activities and entrepreneurial attitudes are lower than I personally had expected before the report. And they are, on the other hand, higher than expected in other more centralized countries. And another surprise is that there's obviously a strong and non-linear impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in almost each of the countries if you compare the countries or subnational regions over time. And the final unexpected result is that in Germany, the fear of failure variable provides much better results nowadays at the end of the last decade and the early third decade of this century than, for example, when GEM Germany and GEM started at the end of the 1990s, where the so-called German Angst was quite popular, also regarding entrepreneurship.
And what accounts for that, do you think, this evolution?
There are different potential reasons. For example, entrepreneurship support policies in Germany are quite a usual thing, meanwhile, in Germany. That was not the case at the end of the last century, when it was quite a new thing for Germany.
Yeah, radical. Yes.
Yeah, indeed. Our economy, the German economy had, and sometimes still have, other comparative advantages. For example, related with the so-called Mittelstand. So small and medium-sized companies, relatively strong and innovative and technological aspects. However, these small and medium-sized countries very often are not new, that they are very often relatively old. So this is not what we in GEM understand when we talk about entrepreneurship.
Right, and may I ask you and both Niels and Anna whether there's other things that maybe were surprising to you that have not been mentioned by Rolf?
Well, in general, I found, so if you look at across the board, I found it very interesting that there were only very few regions who scored low on all entrepreneurial activity indicators. So like I said, that means that entrepreneurship is everywhere. So also policymakers in regions that may have to do with declining population, rural areas that may have challenges. They might be able to tap into the potential that there is entrepreneurial potential in these regions, and it's just a matter to see how they can make use of that. And so I think that is also an encouragement overall to see in our data. So I hope that will also be picked up, and it's really a matter of how can you cater the entrepreneurial ecosystem in such a way that it really fits with the needs of the region and also the opportunities that the region brings. So I think that is an overall conclusion I took from this analysis.
Okay.
Well, in my case, if I had to be honest, because we are too many teams and all of them or almost all of them prepare a regional report, and I've been in many of them. I had the formation, or I have not only the feeling that we were different. So just yesterday was presented a report in Granada, the day before in Murcia and in Seville. When I see the reports, I see that we have many differences between, for instance, Cantabria and Seville.
Yeah.
So in our case, I have no big surprises. I have big surprises with other countries as France or Germany, because I have not that detail on the information, or realize on that detail. But
it's a good is it interesting for you to benchmark?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
At the European level, for sure, because each one of us are focused on our country, and you know more or less how is your country, but I have no idea how was the rest of the countries. And also it's interesting for Spain, because it was a feeling, or I have the information, but I have not the map like we have now, no? So now it's very easy to go to your government and say, okay, have a look. That's why I'm telling you that it's important to support all the regions, not only Madrid, not only Catalonia. So you need to support all the regions, because all of them are different.
Okay, I'm seeing that in the Q&A that our panelists are answering questions, and I hope you're getting the responses there. I think that we can actually continue to maybe look at the future perspective for Europe. Again, I'll turn to you, Rolf. Do you think that the European Regional Report provides any indicators or food for thought for European entrepreneurship of the future? What does it say about the future for European entrepreneurship, this regional report?
I do think that entrepreneurship in Europe and in the European Union territory in particular will become an even more important topic in the future when trying to create a new EU regional policy following the currently dominating so-called smart specialization strategy era. This new era, according to my opinion, will have a stronger focus on things like digitalization, artificial intelligence, citizen-oriented technologies, and cannot afford to ignore, for example, the attention of many young people to save the planet, meaning sustainability in a narrower sense. Right. So new small firms will be an important channel to achieve such goals and to build a kind of counterpower to the 5 global firms currently dominating the platform economy. And the way how entrepreneurship will help here differs from region to region, from subnational region to subnational region. So no one-size-fits-all strategies anymore. From my perspective, this is an opportunity for regional entrepreneurship attempts and for GEM as well.
That's an incredibly insightful sort of crystal ball type statement. So thank you, Rolf. Niels, would you like to build on that, or Anna, either one of you? Any comment about the future perspective for European entrepreneurship?
Well, I think our planet is currently facing a huge amount of challenges, and that entrepreneurs have a big role on this. We need to increase the number of sustainable entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs can be important agents of change, and we need that they put the focus on social, environmental problems. I think maybe in the future we need to enable our reports and should reflect the extent of these new kind of entrepreneurs.
Great, thank you. Niels, anything on your side?
Well, I certainly do not disagree with what Anna and Rolf have mentioned already. As you know, I'm interested in these topics as well. So yeah, and it's good to see that also as GEM, we are collecting more and more information on for instance, social and environmental goals. So in the near future, we'll be able to say a lot more about this. I think we also see indeed, like actually also Rolf mentioned, also in in very different types of regions, we also see a lot of new types of collaborations of entrepreneurs, and they join together in cooperatives, etc. So we might also be able to do a bit more on that, because these cooperatives tend also to really work on social and environmental goals. Yeah, another issue which will happen obviously is also how the developments will go in terms of the use of artificial intelligence. This is also something that we need to have a look at as GEM, and we're trying to implement that also in the next wave of GEM data, to see, first of all, what are the opportunities, but also what does it mean for the current businesses. Yeah, how can we make sure that if AI is used, it will be used in a responsible way, etc. So I think these are also interesting challenges, and I'm also curious how that will play out at a regional level, and also in light of these big companies that Rolf mentioned. So will AI be controlled by a few global companies? I think that would not be the best idea. So these are also things that are really relevant for the near future, I believe.
So, I mean, that just does give us an actually relatively optimistic scenario for entrepreneurship in Europe of the future. What Niels was referring to there is the fact that although we have many questions in our research instruments that are they're asked in the same way, they're the same questions asked in the same way every single year, so that we have a longitudinal view on the evolution of perceptions, attitudes, activities, etc. But we also are dynamic in the fact that we try and integrate new developments out there in the world into our questions. And in the last 3 years, we've been integrating questions on sustainability and the impact of entrepreneurship on sustainability, also including the Sustainable Development Goals. But we have also this year looked more at the digital environment and AI, and will be integrating questions in that respect. And this all will allow GEM to have a perspective on the effects of these global developments on entrepreneurs and on entrepreneurship. Well, it remains for me to say thank you very much to the panel that joined us today. So Rolf and Niels and Anna, thank you for devoting your time, but especially to writing the report. And may I also thank Kostas Rosaglau, who was our interface at Shopify. Again, thanks to Shopify for making it possible to actually produce this report. And thank you to everybody who's listening out there. You see up there now the ways and means of connecting with us on social media. You may visit our website and not only see this report, but also many of the other reports. We also launched recently a women's entrepreneurship report. And very soon in February, we will be launching our global report, which is a major annual event. And just to say, after we launch our global report, there is a plethora of national reports that then follow. So when it comes to international and national perspectives, GEM is definitely your place to go in terms of, knowledge on cutting edge knowledge on entrepreneurship. So if there's anyone out there that wants to connect us with a possible team to join us, please write to us at info@gemconsortium.org. Equally, if there are any prospective sponsors out there interested in GEM, please contact us in that way. So thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. And I think we can close the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.